Chapter 52. This is a long dream. Questioner. Where do questions come from? All these questions, where do they come from? Why all these questions? What is the source of all these questions? Maharaj. You are the source. Your spontaneous presence is appearing with some questions and answers. So your beingness is spontaneous. Your beingness is spontaneous. Out of beingness, the spirit clicked with the body. Questions are all needs, all questions are coming out spontaneously. Prior to beingness, there were no questions, nothing. You were totally unknown to you. You were totally unknown to the world. So it is only through the body that you know yourself. I am somebody, and through which intellectual questions arise. Who am I? Where am I? Where did I come from? Therefore, all questions are body-related questions. These questions will dissolve after leaving the body. Spiritual science says your identity is not the body. The body is not your identity and will not remain so. It is just this spontaneous appearance. There is no reason to any of it at all. It is just like a dream. We don't decide which dream is going to appear. The dream is spontaneous. Today's dream may not be tomorrow's dream. Likewise, this is a dream. All questions are spiritual, intellectual, egoistic questions. At the ultimate stage, there are no questions. There is nothing. Prior to beingness, you had no experiences. You had no questions. You were unknown to you. You have some information and knowledge, but this is because of the body. Therefore, this knowledge is illusion. The body is not your permanent identity. On leaving the body, nothing will remain. There will be no questions left. Questions are created spontaneously, and you're asking them because of the mind, ego, intellect. We are separating ourselves from reality when asking questions. We ask questions as if we are separate individuals. But who or what is supplying the energy to raise the questions? Who is experiencing the questions? Who is witnessing the questions? Who is supplying power to the questions? That you are. Ultimate truth, final truth. It cannot be described in any words. My master said, if you want to compare yourself to anything, compare yourself to sky. Does sky have any questions? Does sky ask, where do I come from? Sky is everywhere. Likewise, your presence, your spontaneous presence is everywhere. But you're measuring yourself in body form, and that is why there are so many questions. Questioner. Thank you, Maharaj. You talk about knowing oneself in a real sense. That's not intellectual and not through words. Can you tell me again what do you mean by real sense, Maharaj? Again, I have to caution you, these are just the words that we are using. There is no real and no unreal. We are discriminating because we have a body form. Is there a someone who can talk about the real and the unreal? No. Nobody exists. Nothing is there. It is only the unborn child who asks these body questions of real or unreal. You are the unborn child. Therefore, reality and unreality are merely connected to logical thinking. Nothing has happened. Nothing is happening. You're asking about illusion. You're talking about the unborn child. Your presence is totally unidentifiable. It is unidentified identity. We're trying to identify reality through the body, and as I keep telling you all so many times, the body is not your permanent identity. It will vanish like a puff of smoke. This knowledge, this reality, has to be engraved, absorbed within you, so that after knowing the reality, you remain unconcerned, uninterested, uninvolved with the world, just like you're unconcerned with a dream. This is a dream world. This is a long dream. King Bartrey was lost in a long dream. He had many wives, but Pingala was his favourite, the love of his life. Pingala reciprocated his love. She'd been overheard saying, "If anything ever happened to my beloved, I would die." The king decided to test the veracity of her love. One day, he sent a messenger to inform her that the king had been killed by a tiger on a hunting trip. On hearing this terrible news, Pingala was broken-hearted and took her own life. When the king heard of the tragedy, he was beside himself with grief, filled with remorse. "Oh, what have I done? How am I going to live without my Pingala? I want her back. I cannot live without her." He had played such a foolish game, a cruel and dangerous game, and now his beloved Pingala was gone. He spent his days grieving at the cremation ground, weeping and groaning out loud for his dear Pingala. Many people joined him in his unending sorrow. One day, a yogi was walking close to the king in the cremation grounds when he dropped his clay pot. The pot broke and smashed into many pieces. The yogi began to cry. He started sobbing heavily, even more loudly than the king, who was crying nearby. The king was annoyed. "Stop your weeping, for goodness sake, stop weeping. I will buy you 100 new pots." "No, no," wept the yogi. "I want my old pot back." "What nonsense," said the king. "What is gone is gone." The yogi stopped crying and said, "O wise king, if you know this, then why are you still crying? Your Pingala is gone and will never return." The king replied, "You cannot compare my loss to yours. I have lost my beloved, my beautiful Pingala that I loved so dearly with all my heart. You've just lost a meaningless earthen pot." The yogi replied, "They are both made from the earth, and what comes from the earth must go back to the earth." He then created 100 identical Pingalas and asked the king to point out his special Pingala. Naturally, the king was unable to identify her. He understood that Pingala was part of the dream he had projected out of his spontaneous presence. All of a sudden, the king became enlightened. He realized that he had been crying over a dream, for something illusory and impermanent. He was so ashamed because he had taken the dream for reality. Shortly after, he renounced his kingdom and became the yogi's disciple and awakened to reality.